So we're back with Dave. This time Dave's trying to defend a couple of wannabe star sailors. Go on then, Dave.
The final example, however, claims to show a wire being visible and comes from Flat Earth Awakening, claiming that you can again see the harness on the astronaut where his t-shirt's rising up, as well as a view of a wire itself.
Let's start the weekend by debunking the ISS. 2 points of reference would I make here. One is top and two just above it. Essentially the top being the anchor point where the harness is coming away, and of course just above it where the second arrow is pointing at some remnants of the harness itself, which I think they faded out, but at certain points we can see it giving the game away.
It's nice and quiet as well.
And now super slow motion. Look at it, see it? And you'll see it on the other side now for briefly, see?
Now, as before, the raised t-shirt can be explained simply by being in 0G. He's had his arm raised up past his head, and he then puts it down to his side, which even...
Oh, so he had his left arm up above his head, and he put it down, and according to you, that was why his t-shirt was protruding. Not in a big clumpy area, like you'd expect with his deltoid being stretched out. No, more like being pulled. Now that might fool a couple of naive individuals, Dave, but when we go and zoom in, we can see both shoulders. Not only the shoulder you're claiming is responsible for his t-shirt being pulled up, but the other shoulder that didn't get raised is also showing tension in his t-shirt, highlighting where some of the attachment points are for his harness. Bear with me. When I pulls it square on to the plastic star sailor, we can see both the shoulders are showing the obvious effects of where the weight's being engaged by some of his harness attachment points. If what Dave said was real, it would only be the one shoulder. Oh dear. What a terrible so-called debunk, Dave. Terrible. But please, continue.
Your shoulder blade. The apparent wire, though, was a little more interesting, and after some digging around, I was able to work out that this was a stream done with astronauts Megan McArthur and Thomas Piskay, and I was able to find the original broadcast and have a look at it. Now, at the start of the broadcast, Thomas has an iPad stuck to his right leg, which isn't on his leg at the time that the wire apparently makes an appearance, because early in the broadcast, he removes the iPad from his leg and sticks it onto the edge of the white box behind him, which is exactly where the wire apparently appears. Seems far more likely that what we're actually seeing here is merely a reflection of his right arm in the screen of the iPad.
Oh right, it's his arm, is it? Well, we'll zoom in and have a look, and let's see if we can work out what part of his arm that is. And then when we zoom in on the reflection of the star sailor, we can clearly see that isn't a human arm. More than likely, as we can see, an attachment point or some sort of contraption that's associated with his harness. And you'll notice the reflection is in perfect sync with Matey Boy's shoulder that's protruding that I highlighted. See it? Perfect sync. And just come back one smidge. In that reflection. Anyone like Dave claiming that is a human arm, the astronaut's arm, enlighten me. What part of the human arm looks like that? Come on, in the comment section. That's clearly not a human arm. That's clearly some sort of contraption or some of the setup these fraudsters use. And it's like I said, it's in perfect sync with this protruding part that we can see right below it there of his t-shirt. This shows you how deluded these mainstream defenders are. Actually thinks that's a human arm. Thought the protruding t-shirt was down to his arm being raised, but the other side is just as raised as well. Absolutely shocking so-called debunk, Dave. Unless you provide details of what part of the human arm that is in the reflection, you've made yourself look like a right clown. Come on, Dave, finish this charade off.
What we're actually seeing here is merely a reflection of his right arm in the screen
What part of his right arm is that, Dave? Oh dear, what a mess you've gotten yourself into.
of the iPad. After all, this is a 20-minute broadcast with lots of objects moving around the frame, including a basket.
Dave, they use multiple different techniques to fool gullible individuals. Augmented reality, they interact with things that aren't actually there. They use real physical props, stick them on the wall and stuff. They also use helium props to get people to believe naively that these people are in a weightless environment and that demonstrable reality is wrong. Come on, Dave, you know this. This has been terrible, fella.
Ball that they take out from the storage compartment behind them, that proceeds to float around and rotate quite freely for quite a long time. It's not swaying around side to side as though it was hanging from a wire like a pendulum.
Who ever said that that basketball or any of the balls these clowns supposedly spin in space were hanging from wires? Who's ever made that claim? Dave, you've been watching me crane videos, fella, haven't you? You couldn't refute them whatsoever with any kind of scientific demonstration. It spun your nuts so much that you've got so confused that you've actually misrepresented my claims, where I get a free pass to bash space anyway, because the actual environment itself is scientifically impossible. You can't leave an air pressure rock on a rocket and fly into a vacuum without having to go through some kind of solid wall. It's just a demonstrable fact, one that proves the globe and space in the way it's portrayed is impossible, Dave. And then when we look at propaganda pieces like your video supposedly defending space and the ISS, all you've done really is expose yourself and show how pathetic and weak the mainstream argumentation really is. This was the so-called debunk, but you just actually made yourself look like a fool and a little bit dishonest, Dave. What a shame. These people just can't help but have dishonesty in their heart. The money corrupts them.